y'all. On today's episode of Bliss to Abundance, we are talking to David Shull, the CEO of Tern Travel, a brand new CRM that is changing the game in technology. We are talking all about how it will save you time, so you're stop wasting it, save you money, help you close more sales, and protect your business. So if you're interested in all of this, you need to keep watching.
Welcome to Bliss to Abundance, the podcast for growth-minded travel entrepreneurs.
Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the Bliss to Abundance podcast. Today's episode, we're talking all about technology in the travel industry. And if you all have been in the travel industry very long, you know that sometimes it's really painful. And our guest today is going to change that for you. So today we have David Shull from Tern Travel. And David, will you introduce yourself a little bit to everybody?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's so great to be here. Excited to be on the podcast. My name is David Shull, CEO and one of the co-founders at Tern. We started Tern a little over a year ago with a really simple mission to empower travel advisors with modern technology. Before starting Tern, I spent 8 years building a technology company called Handshake. My background is in computer science, computer engineering, so really passionate about this kind of intersection of how great technology can really empower travel advisors, and excited to be here.
Yeah, and it's so important. And what I said in the intro is not a lie. Tech in the travel industry has been painful for a long time. And I will, when I started as a travel agent, I have not been a travel agent in a lot of years, but when I started, we didn't even have a CRM. I was turning in commission reports on Excel spreadsheets, which was an absolute and utter joke. But even CRMs, then I left the travel industry for a while and I went back and worked like in marketing in just the general entrepreneurial world. And I had this great CRM. It didn't cost a lot of money a month and it did all of these workflows and things that were automated. And then I went back into the travel industry and I had friends that were like, can you look at this with me? And I'm like, well, can it do this? Because I was comparing it to the program that I had used not in the travel industry. No, it can't do this. And no, it can't do that. And I realized how far behind they are. And now we are having people like you come into the industry and change that. So I want to ask you a question just to get us started. Like, what do you find? This is going to be such a long, I think, answer because it's so much. But what do you find that travel agents are wasting their time on because of bad tech?
Such a good question. And we could spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, your story just brings back so many memories of actually the first ASTA conference that we went to, where we were just trying to talk to as many travel advisors as we could to understand if there was even a need for technology. I mean, like you said, these CRMs have really kind of proliferated in lots of other industries. We were excited about the opportunity to combine technology and travel, but we didn't want to build something that wasn't needed. And so we just had as many of these conversations as we could. And what we heard was that one of the biggest time sucks was like manual data entry, made worse by the fact that advisors were being forced to juggle multiple different systems to do parts of their business. So we, just vividly remember advisors sitting down and being like, okay, like I use this system to build itineraries, and then I use this system for my CRM, and then I have this system to manage my commissions, and then I have to enter my booking data into whatever supplier websites there are. And like, if I need supplier assets, I have to go over here. And it's just, I mean, it was mind-boggling, right? How much fragmentation there was and how much inefficiency that drew. So I think that like broad bucket of travel really needing this kind of one operating system that an advisor can really rely on to build and manage their whole business inspired a lot of what we're trying to do at Tern. I think that the second bucket, and we'll come back to that manual data entry piece, because it's not just system fragmentation, right? But like you look at, you get a confirmation in your email, and then you like manually enter that into the itinerary for your clients. You get a PDF from a DMC and you rebuild that chart. Like there's just manual data that is not super fun. I haven't talked to anybody who loves the manual data entry part of the job, but it's so necessary. So there's a lot of cool innovations happening there that we'll talk about probably later in the conversation. But then there's this kind of like third bucket that I think is even the tooling that has existed hasn't enabled advisors to be as efficient and certainly hasn't enabled them to surprise and delight their clients from a technology perspective. An example I always give here is credit card authorization. Pre-Tern, we talked to travel advisors, and like this is super simple process, or it should be super simple, of getting a compliant authorization to use a client's credit card to book travel was a nightmare, right? It's like, okay, I got my itinerary, my proposal. Now I have to go manually enter it into an invoice, and I add every single line item. I'm like, what information do I have to put there to make this compliance? I don't know. So I guess, and then I send that to my client. My client's like, what is this trip? Because it's been 3 days since they even reviewed the proposal, and you've lost that momentum of, yeah, like I'm excited, I want to buy, I want to make a decision. Anywhere else on the internet, they can just click buy and purchase it. But in travel, it used to be like, you have to like say yes, and then your advisor goes and manually does this, and you've like kind of forgotten about it by the time the credit card authorization comes through. And it also just feels super sketchy to sign a PDF about your credit card details. And so there's just so much inefficiency there that even the existing tech, I think like there's just so much room to improve. So I think we could go on and on, but I like broadly think those 3 buckets are where like the biggest time spent. And then time wasted, the way I think about what wasted time means is it's time that could be spent on more high impact ways to build the business. And those 3 big buckets, I think, are system fragmentation, data entry, and just inefficient processes where people aren't thinking about the end-to-end flow of their systems. It's more of like, I've bolted on a solution to this problem, I bolted on a solution, and that just adds a lot of friction and a lot of work and frustration.
And I think for a lot of travel agents, when that's what they've worked in, either they've always worked in travel, or this has been the only place where they would ever need a CRM. Like they have a job, but they're not using like a CRM process, or they're not using a lot of tech in that manner in their other jobs. They don't know what's out there. And the fact that this is not like, you don't have to do it like this. Like you can, there are better options. There are things out there that work. Like I think about, again, when I came back into the travel industry, and a friend of mine owned an agency, and she was asking me to look at the CRM that she was looking at. And there weren't better options, but I was like, well, can you not set up a workflow where like when this happens, then this happens? Like the person clicks this button and then it sends this email, or it does that I can set that up one time and it's gone. No, and nobody had it. But you all are changing that game. So if you all are listening, you definitely need to check that out. But so we went over the wasted time, but like when it comes to like what we have had, what are the new options on the market? And we're talking about tech in general, but what are some of the technologies that exist that can then help them save time? Because we're looking at it, number one, travel agents either wear all the hats in their business. So they're the marketing manager, they're the salesperson, they're doing the data entry, or they're paying like a VA or something like that to do these pieces for them, which is costing them money. But then also, so that that's like their time is precious, or they are a lot of times doing this, sometimes full time, a lot of times on the side. And so that even more becomes a reason they need that time back in their day.
Yeah.
So what are some of the availabilities in tech that will save time essentially on basic daily mundane tasks?
Yeah. So I'll give maybe a couple of broad examples, and then I'll pull from our experience at Tern just for examples. Okay. And I think you can look at other places for this kind of criteria. But I mean, I think broadly, you've seen this in many other industries, to your point, where you're taking many systems and you combine it into these like highly specialized systems. In the venture capital world, they call it vertical software, where it's like, instead of having this highly general software, like a CRM that's meant for every industry, or a marketing tool that's meant for every industry, technologies are now starting to realize that actually probably the way to really create special experiences is to build vertical software. So you just focus on this one thing. In Tern's case, we're just focused on the travel industry, building for travel advisors, how to do that. And then that enables this kind of system fragmentation to go away, right? So you can have one system that actually does a majority, probably not everything, but a majority of those things. And so I think that's like piece one, is that even if you're happy with multiple systems, there are inherent inefficiencies that you're going to have if you have more than like a couple of systems that are doing that. So I'd look for there are options out there that can help you consolidate. The second piece, and I think this is like kind of a little bit of a buzzword, but it's going to be quite transformational, is AI. You'll reduce a lot of your manual entry and a lot of your friction by consolidating systems. The second part, though, is like, how do I take a confirmation email? How do I take that PDF that we talked about from DMC, or like just a website that has an activity I want to bring into my itinerary builder? And there's a lot of hype around AI. I think a lot of people have looked at it through like a marketing lens, and how do I create 50 social media things? And like, I think there's ways to go on that. I think what you get from these models is like fairly vanilla, and I think actually as humans, we're gonna filter that out even more from a cognitive perspective. We're just gonna see like, oh, like that's not human, that's not personal, that's like AI. And even stuff that doesn't look like AI, like, so I think we could go down a whole rabbit hole of what I think AI and marketing is gonna look like in the future. I think there's some cool things there, but I think actually that the impact that advisors should look for in AI is, how can I do less manual data entry? And so we'll be rolling out in March, depending on when this comes out. It may already be live, but like, we're rolling out this feature that'll take a PDF or a website or email confirmation and like automatically populate your itinerary from that. You don't have to do anything else. So like, that kind of technology, I think, is going to be transformational for freeing up advisors to focus on their kind of core differentiator, right? I think advisors, it's expertise, it's the knowledge, it's relationships that are really differentiated. Anything that doesn't fit in that bucket, like, I think there are technology and tools that can help reduce the workload there.
I think that point is so important. And when you look at the time, again, saving the time, when you have them do the tasks, my opinion on AI is it should be doing the tasks that you don't need to do. And of course, from a marketing perspective, which is my whole like thing, I think marketing needs a human touch. I think because marketing is truly about connections, and AI can't build a connection with another human. It just can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever sound, it always sounds dramatic, but not emotional. I don't know how to say that differently, but it's
sure,
like, it doesn't evoke emotion from you, but it sounds dramatic. It sounds like it's going to be like this, like the plot thickens type thing, but there's not really any emotional connection, which marketing is required for. It also can't manage client relationships in the sense of communication with clients in a way where it's like one-to-one. And those are the two places that you should be spending your hours, your actual time. And so if you free up your time of typing crap in from one screen to another, you've got more time to do these things.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'd add maybe to that too, the creativity that goes into being an advisor, right? I think we get asked a lot in the kind of tech realm of like, well, like, isn't AI just going to be a better itinerary builder than like a person? And there's like, the way that these AI models work is basically just like mathematical averages, right? And like the example I always like to use is like, if I were telling you we're talking about travel and I said the Ritz and asked you to fill in the next word, you would probably say Carlton, right? And that's basically how these AI models are working at just a massive scale, right? They're just predicting what the next word should be based on the context that they're given. And so what that means is that it's very hard to get something that is like truly personalized and that's not using this kind of law of averages. The other problem is that they're trained at a point in time, and in travel it's so dynamic, right? Like a restaurant gets new ownership and 3 days later it just goes downhill. It doesn't have that like, really hard to describe feeling. And these data sources just like aren't real time enough to account for that, right? And so I think that travel and the travel advisors, like, yes, like they should be using these tools, but you should never put something in front of your client, whether it's marketing or content or an itinerary that hasn't been that AI did. Like, you should use AI. I like to think of it as like the AI should be the advisor's back office best friend, right? But like your clients, as soon as they feel like they're working with AI, why work with you? Yeah. Why work with you? There's no point, right? And so this is where we think a lot about like AI is the best friend of the advisor for taking these like manual workflows off your plate, data entry off your plate. Like, it can be a great brainstorming thought partner for you, but like your clients want to feel like they're working with a human, and that's the differentiation.
When it comes to building an itinerary with AI, the person putting the information into the prompt would have to put so much. They are building the itinerary before AI spits something back, because they're going to have to tell it what they're going to have to give it the information. And so if you're just asking it to build an itinerary, again, To me, it's the same thing. And I say this in marketing all the time. Like, don't hide or hold back your best tips because they can find it on Google, they can find it on Pinterest or whatever. That's a one size fits all vacation, and you do a one of a kind. AI cannot do
Yeah.
it one of a kind. They're, like you say,
Yeah.
they're doing a law of averages. It may take less time. You're not doing as much research, but it's still not a personalized experience. And so, but there is a fear, both in my industry and in the travel industry, that AI is going to take over our jobs and we're going to be unnecessary. And I feel like AI is a tool that we should be using. Absolutely. It should be used, but used appropriately.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and I think that it's the people that really think about AI in that way that are going to be super successful because they're going to be able to do 10 times as many trips and work with 10 times as many clients as somebody who's not, and their clients will never know. But it's just they've made their workflow so much more efficient that they can do that. I think one example too that I really like to use just on that information point. So I actually did this for kind of a test. I asked ChatGPT. I was like, "What are the best cabins on Virgin voyages?" And this prompt was actually something that I thought of because I was talking to an advisor about a Virgin cruise, and they're like, everybody thinks about the balconies as having these like really cool, really iconic red hammocks, but some of the cheapest suites or the cheapest balconies, which if you're just shopping for price, you'd be like, oh, this looks like the same. It's not clear on the website, it's not clear, but they don't have the hammock because the way the ship goes, like you don't actually get the hammock there. So you can imagine how disappointed the customer is when they arrive and like, oh, I saved a little bit of money, but I don't have that iconic experience that I thought I was gonna have. So you ask ChatGPT and it just gives you a summary of all the cabins. And like some people like different cabins for different reasons. And it has no idea that there's this little detail that could make or break how somebody perceives that experience.
Yeah.
And how would it, right? Like, and that's where I think advisors like, I'm all in on this industry being durable and long-term and becoming even more valuable with AI. But our job as technologists is like, how do we build the AI to empower you as travel advisors so that you can focus on those things?
Yeah. And doing that, but like that, and that definitely saves time. But even away from the AI, just the reminders or like the workflow situations, like explain what a workflow would look like or how that could impact the way that an advisor does their job.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of this, right? There's the kind of workflow tools, which again, Tern's launching a major update to this in March. So depending on when this goes up, it may already be there. But we think about how do we make it so that advisors don't have to worry about dropping balls, right? Like you've got so many different tasks that go into so many different trips. There's so much context switching. Like you said, a lot of people are trying to do this like kind of part-time as they grow their business. And there's so many details that go into travel that you kind of need this technology partner to be like, hey, I got you. Like you tell me what the recipe is and I'll make sure that for every trip it gets done. And so we're introducing a whole new era of task and message templates directly integrated with your email, which we'll talk about in a second. We're introducing automations, which are flexible. I think this is something going back to what we talked about earlier, where like a lot of tech companies who don't have that kind of like tech company experience, they build these in a very like siloed place. So you can set up an automation, but only in the context of trips, right? Or you can set up an automation only in the context of a contact. And really like, that's not how advisors work, right? Like I need a place that I can get reminded that my client's passport is expiring 7 months before it does. So I can send them a note and look like a superhero from avoiding any problems there. And I need something that reminds them about their birthday. So I can send them a personalized note 3 days before. And I also need to know all the things I need to do for all my trips that are coming up. Like it's not siloed, right? It is like, I have all these things I need to do and I need to do them when I need to do them. So that's how we built this workflow and automation tool. It lets you do different workflows that apply to different types of trips, that automatically looks at your CRM data and reminds you of kind of key moments to create those personal human connections with your clients. And that can actually automate the not only task creation, but sending directly from your email things like reminders or personal notes or like, hey, we're excited for your vacation. So there's so much that can be done there so that you don't have to worry about dropping balls. You've got this kind of this always on assistant that's helping you. And so that's how we really start to think about these workflows, which is exactly what we're calling them in turn, really unlocking another level of efficiency for advisors.
Yeah. And talking about that whole email thing, that's something I don't feel like people understand enough, because there's very few CRMs that like people don't realize or don't think that there's any way they could work without their email, and they can't work without their email, but they can put it all in one spot.
Yeah. I was talking to an advisor just last week, and then we were kind of talking about this email flow, and we were talking about like what are the most manual parts of your day to day. And she's like, well, like one of the workflows is like I'll get these different confirmations from a supplier in my email. They'll have documents and receipts and all these different things, and like I'm too busy, so I pay my virtual assistant to go in and like I put them in a Google Drive. They then download them, upload them to the itinerary builder, and then manually enter in all the details. And it's probably like 15 to 20 minutes for a sample or simple confirmation. If it's a DMC that's got a whole itinerary, it could be 2 to 3 hours. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of inefficiency there, right? And this is where these two things like email and AI come together. Like in turn, what you'll do is because if a supplier emails David at Tern Travel, my email, like it would come right into my inbox and into Tern at the same time. They don't have to do anything special. There's no BCCing or forwarding or any of that section. It just shows up, and I'll be able to say like, yeah, parse this email into this trip. Hey, boom, it's done. Pulls in the documents, pulls in all the confirmation numbers, and now everything's in that place. Your clients can access those confirmation details. Like we've just taken 2 or 3 hours and we've made it 2 clicks, right? And that's where these things really start to come together. And you can get, reminders, and you can send emails automatically using that. And like, there's just so much really cool workflow that goes in here. And like you said, this isn't like, it's hard. I mean, and the engineering team that we have is truly world-class, but it's not like this has never been done before. I mean, look at like HubSpot, Salesforce, like some of these industry leading CRMs, and like they do the same thing. It's just not been brought to travel. And I think it's long overdue because so much of travel is in the inbox, right? And like, it's time to digitize that.
And you mentioned the idea, and so that's one way that tech's saving money, because they're saving time, and that's time is money essentially. But also if you're hiring out help and things like that, and then I think about, okay, then where could they be turning that money over? Again, marketing. Okay, you need a human to do that. Have them then now scheduling your marketing out, and you've saved money and done something that a human needs to do. But the other thing, we mentioned it earlier about the making sure that not necessarily saving you money, but making you more money, essentially, or saving a sale, is when you've got the momentum to make the sale, and then you have to say, okay, well, now let's manage this. And in the travel industry, prices change so rapidly that if there's a time lapse between when they email you, but they check that email, and then they respond, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and you're in bed because you're like me and you're a granny, and you go to bed at like 9:30, and then we don't check that until 6 a.m. the next morning. And the price has changed. Now I have to go back and tell them, well, it's not exactly the same, especially if there's flights involved. If there's flights involved, especially, those prices change very rapidly. And then the same thing happens. And I actually was talking to an advisor not long ago, and her and a client went back and forth 3 times with 3 different prices because the flights kept changing, and she needed to get an approval to go ahead and do it. And so you all are changing that game as well.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the analogy I just thought of, I don't know if it's a good one or not, right? But like if people are struggling with like spending too much money on their credit cards, like there's the old trick of like you put it in a water and then you freeze it, right? And it forces you to wait when you would want to make a purchase, because you got to wait for it to thaw out, or you got to figure out how to break the ice, right? And there's like this kind of like psychological barrier that actually drives less spending. If you think about how most credit card authorizations flows, it's basically like the ice is the inefficiency of the workflow, right? It's like, okay, cool. Like this itinerary looks great. I'm super excited. And the advisor's like, cool. Like I got the approval. And just like you said, like now I'm going to go and I'm going to like build the invoice, which like best case scenario is taking 30 to 45 minutes. In your case, like time zones, travel, you got these things. It could be 2 to 3 days. It's giving the client a lot of time. You're like, well, like, is that the right price? Like, can I buy a better price? Like, there's price shopping involved. There's like, well, like, is that actually the vacation we want to do? Like, we want to just, there's just like, it's too much room for like decision. And then you give a lot of thought and reflection and like price shopping, and it just, it's not good. So what we've really focused on is like, how do we create these experiences that provide compliance protection for the advisor's business, but also, and removes data entry, but also from the client perspective, feels like you're just online checkout. And so if you look at like our credit card authorization flow, you build out this beautiful proposal in Tern, and that has all the information necessary to get a compliant credit card authorization built into it. We'll even tell you exactly what fields you need to add. It's got places for like terms and conditions, cancellation policies. We worked really very closely over many, many months with travel agent lawyers and all these kind of different pieces. And so there's a ton of work that goes into this simplicity, but now it's like you send the proposal to your clients, they're like, yes, this looks great. They click on approve. They can make decisions right there. They click on approve and they're like, cool, let's authorize credit card. They enter the credit card details. It has all the paper trail that you need to help fight chargebacks in the future, which is, again, something that most advisors don't necessarily have when you're manually creating these invoices because you don't know what to put, right? Especially if you're on the newer side of the advising, it's like black box. We do that automatically. We've got this PDF that's created, sent to the client and to you that's like meant to forward on to a credit card company if you ever get a chargeback. So you're like got that level of protection. But I think the most important part of this whole thing is that there's this sophistication, there's this cool like risk management, but from the client perspective, it's like just checking out online. And so right in the flow of reviewing that proposal, and like we're still getting the data on this, but we know it converts higher, we know it's like safer, and we think that's the future. It's like great technology combined with a travel advisor is just going to drive more sales, grow the industry. It's going to be great.
They're so used to that. That feels normal. It feels like if they were, I mean, I want them to set themselves apart from Expedia, but it still feels like normal. This feels like what it would if I was buying a pair of shoes. It's the same essential process of entering that in, so it doesn't feel like that. Is this? And you would be surprised how many people are like, "Are you real?" Because I mean that's happening to people now, right? And like they're asking if it's real or whatever. And this feels, it looks professional anyway. I mean, it's branded. It looks impressive, and then it's something that they're used to doing, and it just feels more normal.
I love that line of like, you should be differentiated from Expedia. We could not agree more, right? Like that's where this human component comes in. We do not think the right way to differentiate yourself against like the Expedias of the world is to have worse technology, right? That's not, that's, and so that's where we're like,
professional. There's two problems in this is going down a whole different rabbit hole, but there's two problems in the travel industry and the way people market. And I have been on a rant and tear about this for the last month, but number one, we are so focused as travel agents on selling destinations that we forget the fact that our service is the sell. They can buy the destination anywhere. They can't get our service anywhere. So that's what the number one thing. And then the other part is, and I've seen this all over, I'm in travel agent groups and stuff, and people that are like, requesting a service fee is a red flag. If your agents are asking for service fees, run away. And I'm like, whoa, we're professionals. And that right there saying we have the state that our tech is equally as good, we come across as professional, that is going to make people more at ease paying a fee, because it doesn't look like, if it kind of looks sketch and now you're asking me for money, now I'm questioning things. But if it looks professional, it looks like I would get something from a real estate office or an attorney's office or something like that. I promise you, nobody's questioning whether or not they need to pay an attorney fee when they are asking for professional service. So if it looks professional, like they would get from another professional place, that also becomes easier to pay your worth and charge your worth.
100%. And the way I've kind of framed that in the past is that, and it ties in a little bit to like the AI piece, right? Where it's like, I think sometimes advisors fall into a trap, particularly if they're newer, of like, my job is to make booking easier. And it's like, like that actually probably is not going to be very durable, right? Because like booking one isn't that hard today. I mean, if you know what you want to book, right? But like, and then two, like AI is going to make it even easier to do that. The value is on your knowledge, your expertise, all those little things, right? The people that you know in destination. I mean, think about what makes travel so special. I use this example. I went on a Windsor cruise when I was transitioning out of the last company I worked for, and like had this kind of nice relaxation. One of my most vivid memories from that trip was I was walking down to the water sports platform, and the water sports coordinator was like, "Oh my gosh, David, like I've been waiting, like the conditions are finally perfect. I know you want to wakeboard. Let's go wakeboarding right now in like the Bora Bora Bay. And it was just like one of those most like incredible memories, not only because, but what I remember most is not the wakeboarding. It was the fact that like this stranger knew me and was excited to make this experience happen. And the relationships that advisors have make that possible, right?
Yeah.
And that's not $250. Like it's really $500. Like charge your service fee because that's the value that you're bringing. Not I can book this for you, right? It's not an admin service.
So I teach when I'm teaching marketing to stop saying book with me.
Yeah.
Because people when they think the word booking, they think of Expedia. I'm clicking one button and I'm done. You transform that word book into plan. Because there's a whole lot more that goes into it than clicking a button and now I'm done. And so, but it's the way that we describe it. If we have to set ourselves apart from those types of big box stores and online booking and all of that. And and one of those is the vocabulary, but then also saying that right there, charge your worth and charge your fees. Again, when you are performing and looking like a professional, not even just what it looks like to a client. It becomes easier in your own mind to justify because it's like, I look like a business. I'm not sending a Word document or a Google sheet out. I'm sending, I look like a business, and it makes you start to feel like a business and feel like a professional and have the confidence to put forth those things. And then when you have all of these other tech pieces, the reminders, and now I'm remembering everybody's birthday, or I'm remembering to send these reminders, or they're sending for me because I set it up in the first place. I don't have to do that every single time.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to feel like I'm running a business and I don't have a side hustle. I am running a business, and it starts to, everything kind of stands on that. You feel like more of a professional, and it's really hard to do that without good tech, not only because of what you're presenting to the world, but because nobody has the time in the day to handle all of those little individual things and not drop any balls.
Totally agree. I was talking actually with a DMC rep the other day, and they were kind of explaining like a lot of their job is translating from DMCs and suppliers internationally to like American speak, which I thought was pretty funny. And I was like, what does that mean? And like, well, one of the big things that we see, particularly like newer advisors, and there's a lot of them struggle with, is this idea of like they're selling from their own wallet, not that of their client.
Oh, 100.
And I think that's where a lot of these service fees come in. Like, well, like when I pay $250 to have it's like, maybe not, but like you don't necessarily think about money the same way or time the same way. And you also probably, because it's you, and I think there's a lot of, like, it's just natural to like undermine the value that you're bringing. You start to question all those things. But by like putting the service fee out there, it's going to, like, we talk about this for hours, but like, it's going to protect you from wasting your time, and it's going to provide, you're going to get a couple people to pay the service fee. And suddenly like there's that virtuous cycle of like, yeah, like I am valuable. Like I am doing this. I am providing real quick value. And so I think I'm a big fan of that. Everyone should do it, in my opinion.
Tech has ways to charge those service fees that like all of that is built in. And here's the other thing, like again, this is going down a rabbit hole, and we're not going to go too far down it, but like if I was coaching someone now, I would be talking to them about building an offer suite where you may even have more than one option for working with you. If you don't have good tech, that becomes impossible. But with a system like Tern, it's not impossible. You can absolutely build a business like that.
Yeah. And it goes back to that, the optics, right? Like how it looks matters, right? If you send like a Word doc and it's like, these are my feet, it's going to hit different. Like than if you're like, like here's like the selection of things I have. Here's a very professional looking proposal that's interactive. Here's like a beautiful credit card authorization that's got my branding and logo that's auto created. Here are the automated reminders that I'm sending. Like a world where there's so much spam, so much fraud, so much noise from AI and all these other things that we're bombarded with, people's like BS meters, for lack of a better word, are so much higher. And I think skimping on tools, skimping on like, how do I actually like elevate and think about the brand, makes it really hard to break out of that, especially when you're moving from that like friends and family to like strangers world. They don't know you. They don't necessarily have that relationship with you yet. And if if they think that it's like, oh, this is like a more elevated scam, somebody's trying to get my credit card details, like they will never respond to your email. They won't come like engage with your social media, right? Like, so you got to cut through the noise. And I do think systems and tools and branding are a big part of that.
Big time. Okay, there's one more thing that we need to touch on, and I know we got to do it quickly, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's really important because, again, you touched on it just briefly, and it's so important. Because when I was an advisor, nobody talked to me about protecting my business. We had a credit card authorization form, and yes, this was more than 10 years ago, but it was a Word doc that they were like just signing off on. I mean, there was no legal, and it was just like, Kelli has to charge blah, blah, and like nobody was talking about chargebacks. And again, I mean, I want to say I was young. I really wasn't that young. But I had no idea what that meant. I didn't work in that realm. My normal job was scrubbing surgical cases. I was not in a realm where I was thinking about that or terms and conditions. Nobody talked to me about having terms and conditions for my business. Nobody talked to me about sending. I eventually started copying and pasting Disney's cancellation policy into a Canva presentation and sending it out and asking them to sign a Google form that they had seen it, because I was trying to build something that I all of a sudden felt important, but nobody was training on that. And so I do feel like protecting your business is something that not enough travel advisors know about, and they have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, so, I'll always preface this with like, not a lawyer, so a lot of time with lawyers to figure this out, but, not a lawyer, so like, can't really find no legal advice. But I think that the terms and conditions are really important to kind of protect yourself from the worst case. Worst case being, something goes horribly wrong on a trip and your clients want to hold you responsible. And in the absence of terms and conditions, like there's a world where they could come after you for not only the full cost of the trip, but for damages, depending on what happened. And so terms and conditions are the legal document that like help protect you from that and a whole bunch of other things. Then there's the kind of financial risk piece around, and our recommendation is always to work with a lawyer to get that. There's some different templates and things out there. There's a lot of variances in how people run their business. So getting actual counsel is always good. But the second part is this kind of like financial piece, like you mentioned, credit card authorizations, which are really a protection for chargebacks. Ladies, a lot of people don't know like what is a chargeback. We wrote a whole blog post on this on our website, so Tern Travel. If you go to our blog, you'll find it there. But the way that I describe it is, if you've ever had or you know somebody who's had their credit card stolen, right? I had this happen when I was in the UK. All of a sudden, I noticed like 30 charges for Uber Eats and McDonald's, which is not what I was spending my money on at the time. And I was like, okay, that's been stolen. And so I called, I think it was American Express or Chase, and was like, hey, like somebody stole my card. And they're like, okay, like talk through every single charge, and they refunded everyone that I didn't recognize. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, like the credit card companies just like got my back. They're protecting me from that. Like, no, what actually has happened is that McDonald's and Uber Eats just got all that money pulled out of their bank account. And so that's called a chargeback, right? The credit card company has basically said, like, you took money that wasn't yours, and that's your fault, even if you had no way to know somebody was stealing this credit card. And so now we're taking it back. And so the same thing can happen with it in travel. In fact, this happened in a massive way during the pandemic. People who couldn't cancel their trips were like, well, I'll just like claim fraud. And they didn't realize that the people they're defrauding are actually the travel advisors and the travel companies. They thought their credit card company was just like magically coming up with the money. And so the standards have gone way up for the documentation that travel advisors and travel companies need to prove this. And so the risk is that if you do an improper credit card authorization and your client charges that back, let's say it's a $10,000 cruise, they say like they can't go because something happened, they didn't buy the travel insurance that you wanted. They're like, well, no problem. We'll just tell our credit card company we didn't authorize that charge. Well, the credit card company tends to believe their clients. And so they'll pull that money back immediately from your cruise company. So 10 grand just disappeared from your cruise company's bank account. Cruise company is not just like, oh, like, I guess, okay. They're going to come for you, the travel advisor, like, you gave us this credit card. Prove us. Like, you're either responsible for paying this 10 grand, or you're going to show us that the client didn't actually authorize this. And what that authorization needs to look like is actually more than just a paper saying you can use my credit card. It has to have the specific amount, so the $10,000, the cruise company's on there, so I'm charging $10,000 to this cruise line, the date that it was authorized, a signature of the person authorizing it, cancellation policy, that's new post-pandemic. It didn't used to have the cancellation policy on it, but the credit card companies now demand proof that they saw the cancellation policy, and ideally the terms and conditions of the supplier. Most one-page Word documents for credit card authorization don't have all those things for every single thing you're using credit card for.
Yeah.
And so like this is the level of detail that we went into at Tern. We're like, cool, like we'll just build all that into this flow and make it feel like magic.
And you all even pull from most vendors, suppliers, and automatically pull in their cancellation policies and terms and conditions for the suppliers. Not all, I'm sure that there's some that are easier to work with than others. I have no doubt, because I've worked in this industry long enough to know that. But you do, a lot of them are pulling in automatically, right?
Yeah, so right now we're saving them. So anything that you've used or added right now, like will automatically be saved. You won't have to re-enter those. Over time, we do expect to open it up for suppliers to be able to come in and manage that, or to do kind of more automatic parsing with AI and like that type of thing. So, so we continue to look at how do we make that streamlined. But I think, that flow, I think, is such a good example where like, hopefully you never have to find out. But like, if you do get a chargeback and you're not prepared, it will be the worst moment in a travel owner's life.
Most travel agents are not prepared to handle that kind of thing. All right. Well, it's eye-opening, and it's also life-changing for a travel advisor in their day-to-day. And so if everyone wants to know where they can find more, David, tell us where to go.
Yeah, so there's a couple different places. It's one, we've got a page on the partner portal, so warmlessceo.com/Tern.
Yep.
And then so that'll have our kind of profile on it. And then our website, we mentioned it with the blog and everything, is just tern.travel. Tern is Tern, like the Arctic tern, named after the Arctic tern because it's the animal with the largest migratory pattern of any animal in the world. And so that's our website. So you can find us there. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, my email is just david@tern.travel.
All right. And all that stuff will be in the show notes and descriptions below. David, thank you for hanging out with me today. This was an awesome conversation.
So fun. Appreciate it. And just feel grateful to be part of the community.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you all. All right. Thanks, David.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey guys, Cyndi Williams here. If you like that last video, make sure you check out all of the other content on our channel. And if you want to follow along and travel with me around the world and see how I run my amazing travel brands and get some great tips on how to grow your own, make sure you check out that other content. I'm going to drop a couple videos here. Click those links. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.